Hello and welcome to another episode of Voices to End Hunger. I'm Minerva Delgado. The United States government recently reopened after a record-breaking 43-day shutdown. During this time, federal nutrition programs found themselves in the crosshairs of debates over funding and a larger political battle. Caught in the middle were tens of millions of individuals and families who depend on food assistance. Food bank demand soared, with many struggling to keep up with need. On this episode, I speak with two food bank leaders serving a wide spectrum of populations. Rhonda Chafin of the Second Harvest Food Bank of Northeast Tennessee and Craig Rice of Manna Food Center, which serves Montgomery County, Maryland, just north of Washington, D.C. Together, they share their observations about their operations during the shutdown, the lingering effects heading into the holiday season, and what lessons may be learned by those dedicated to building a food-secure future moving forward. Rhonda, Craig, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure.
To start out with, you both run organizations, food banks, that serve very different populations, which will give us a good snapshot of things that are happening right now. Can you talk a bit about your organizations and the people you serve? Rhonda, would you start off?
Yes, our organization is located in Northeast Tennessee. We're part of the Feeding America Network, which makes up 200 food banks, and we're one of 5 food banks in the state of Tennessee. As far as our population and our service territory in Northeast Tennessee, it's very rural in nature. And, at times we have to work very hard to be able to reach those neighbors who don't have enough food, that are food insecure.
Thank you. Craig?
Yeah, so Manna Food Bank is in the nation's capital shadow, so Montgomery County, where we serve a very diverse population. But a population that also includes a large portion of federal government employees. And so, of course, during times where things are challenged, as they are right now, with federal government layoffs and DOGE cuts and things like that, it's impacted a lot more of our community. And our community is more fragile when our government is not doing well. And so that certainly means that even more people are coming to our doors. And so, Montgomery County alone is about 1.1 million people. We are the largest food bank in the region in Montgomery County, and then partner with other larger entities that serve multiple regions like Capillary Food Bank and Maryland Food Bank that are our Feeding America partners.
Thanks, Craig. Let's dig in a little bit into some of the things you said. How did the recent government shutdown and delays in rolling out SNAP benefits affect your operations? Craig, you already mentioned that Manna Food Center also has a number of furloughed federal workers that live in the county. Can you speak to that as well?
So at Manna and in Montgomery County, we actually are a federal government hub. We have a number of different hubs, NIH, FDA, NIST, and many others. And so we've lost about 8,500 jobs in the state of Maryland between the time frame of March to May. And in that same time frame, Montgomery County has lost about 2,700 jobs. And that's just federal government employment jobs. The ancillary jobs, the folks who clean the buildings, the folks who are the dry cleaners who depended on those federal government workers and those installations to remain open, all of them have been heavily impacted. And so all of those employees, including a woman who came to us from NOAA, the National Oceanographic Atmospheric Administration, came to us the other day to our warehouse and knocked on our doors during the government shutdown and said, I need help. And I don't know what it is that I need to do, but I know I need food. And those are the kinds of things that are incredibly troubling for us and also incredibly challenging for us to try and meet that need on top of food insecurity that already was there in the Washington metropolitan region.
Thank you. Rhonda, how did your food bank fare during the recent shutdown and delay in rolling out SNAP benefits? We know that you serve more rural areas with higher percentage of SNAP recipients, both than the state and the national averages. Can you speak a little bit to how your communities were affected?
Absolutely. When you look at Northeast Tennessee and even the state of Tennessee, we have nearly 700,000 people on SNAP in the state of Tennessee. We're the smallest food bank as far as service territory and population, and we have 52,000 people that are on SNAP within our service territory. But the unique thing about the area that we serve, we have some counties that we serve that are almost at 25% food insecurity rate. And that is very troubling when you look at food banks that have high levels of food insecurity in their service territory, because those individuals not only depend on emergency food assistance, but SNAP is a big part of their resource to feed their families. As soon as there was a disruption in SNAP benefits, that's when we had to spring into action, because we knew that we had individuals that were not only depending on SNAP, but it most of the time was not enough for them and their families. They were relying on emergency food, and we knew that they did not have their SNAP benefits coming to them. So we had to spring into action to mobilize and activate our emergency SNAP assistance plan, and that was mass distributions in each one of our counties. And we were serving about 1,000 families a day in each of those counties to be able to make sure that individuals had adequate food to be able to feed their families, because they were without, the SNAP benefits for almost 15 days, and they were really stretched to the level of they didn't have food for their families.
Well, thank you both and all of your staff members and partners for stepping in during the government shutdown in the way that you did to really make sure that folks in your communities had the food that they needed at the time. What is the state of your operations now? We've been hearing that due to the delayed SNAP benefits, some people who rely on food assistance need to make some very stressful trade offs when it comes to rent, utilities. How is this impacting the number of people you're seeing now, even as benefits have restarted? And what do you foresee for the next couple of weeks and months?
Yeah, let me just say that one of the things that we caution folks is that even though the government is no longer shut down, doesn't mean that the need does not continue. So many people's lives have been impacted by this and have risen in terms of their debt, and so many other things that are impacting families. The staggering costs of groceries these days, whether it's with tariffs or just the economic conditions that we find ourselves in, have not changed. And so, because of that, what we are seeing is that we need to be consistent with that new level of service that we're providing to our community. And so, over the past 3 weeks, we've increased our distributions by 35%, going from about 4,400 families to about 6,000 families. And that is going to continue in perpetuity. It's not going away after Thanksgiving. It's not going away after Christmas. We know that there are more families out there that need our assistance. And, as Rhonda was talking about percentages of families that are in need, it's staggering across this country. In Montgomery County, it's 34% of our population is food insecure. Half of that in Montgomery County, 52% of those are severely food insecure. And you would think that in an area like Montgomery County that is so affluent, that you wouldn't find this, but there is such great disparity between those who have and those who don't. And that is a tremendous challenge for us in continuing to meet the need that will exist now and will exist a year from now and will exist 5 years from now.
Thank you, Craig. It sounds like you're describing a new normal, which is a little bit tough to hear, I have to say. Rhonda, are you seeing similarly?
We continue to see individuals that really stretch their resources and used up resources to depend on these services. In a normal month, we're serving about 10,000 families. So that number also increased to about the same percentage as Craig was sharing, about 35%. We saw increase during those weeks with SNAP disruption. But I think the main thing for us is what we saw during this time is individuals that, specifically seniors, that they are not able to work. They're fragile. They get a very low amount of SNAP benefits. We wish they were able to get more. The benefit level for them is so low, at about $24. Also, during that time when we were serving individuals, we started talking to those individuals and we started really learning about what they were faced with. It gave us an opportunity for them to tell their story. And when they told their story, many of them were sharing with us that they were grandparents raising grandchildren. And the number in our region is staggering of grandparents raising grandchildren. I will tell you that the number of seniors that came through for those special distributions, I would say at least 50% of them are raising their grandchildren just from those individuals that we were serving. They had a child in the household, which leads me to believe that either they're raising their grandchild or they're providing a home for their child and their grandchildren. We still continue to hear that with SNAP benefits restored, people are not back to normal. They are in need, and we've continued our distributions in these counties to be able to make sure that individuals have access to additional emergency food. So that's really important to us. And I don't think that it's going to be back to the norm anytime soon. Craig said the cost of food and some of those other things are very challenging for individuals, and they are, because the cost of food has gone up, but benefits has not. And for us and for food banks across the nation, we really need to make sure that federal nutrition programs are kept at the level they're at or increased. We have to have that to be able to make sure that individuals and communities throughout the nation have access to nutritious food. And I think it's just so very important to the work that we do, that because for one meal that we provide, SNAP provides 9. And we cannot provide and make up the difference. And for us, that's been particularly challenging because all of the pressure, all of the support was on food banks during those days, and the resources to feed the nation's food insecure. And that pressure was very great, I must say.
Thank you for raising, I think, two very important issues. One is that seniors are really struggling when it comes to food insecurity. And Meals on Wheels America has shared with us that senior programs across the country have long wait lists. So, unlike other federal nutrition programs, which may be entitlements, which are fully funded, or there is a guarantee of funding if you're eligible, that's not the case with senior nutrition programs. So, they were already facing a deficit before we got into this latest issue. So, thank you for raising awareness around that. And I think the other point is very well taken, which is we can't food bank our way out of this problem. As a former food banker, I definitely empathize. We know that in general, the supplies of food going to food banks from the government, from donations, have been decreasing. And you're facing increased need and requests for those services. So we know that you guys are in a tough spot, and charities can't make up for these deficits in SNAP and other federal nutrition programs that can reach such a broad populations, and just the scale of what the federal government can do can't be matched by charities. So thank you for pointing that out as well. Next, I'd like to turn a little bit to thinking a little bit more about the future. Congress just passed a bill for funding for USDA until the end of this fiscal year, which is September. And so there's a bit of breathing room there. We know that the funding has been approved. However, significant changes to SNAP are going to be kicking in from the budget reconciliation bill that was passed on July 4th and signed by the president, I should say, on July 4th. And we've seen that that will have significant impacts to SNAP. One, cutting SNAP benefits to the tune of about $187 billion over 10 years, restricting eligibility for SNAP for numerous populations, including lawful immigrants, as well as increasing work requirements, which really turn out to be paperwork requirements for significant populations as well. In addition to, for the first time, shifting significant funding to states to pay for SNAP benefits, in addition to what traditionally has been a state match for administrative fees. So there's a lot coming your way in the states related to this bill. And so we're just curious, what are some of these discussions looking like in your organizations when it comes to what the needs are going to be in the next 6 months, let's say?
So I think the needs start with building coalitions to make sure that people understand the problems that are going to befall us as communities and as a nation. People need to understand that food security is economic security. They need to understand that when people go hungry, they can't work, they can't learn, they can't create, can't participate fully in the civic and economic life, and we all suffer as a result. And so, therefore, if we know that these things are coming, we need to prepare and make sure that we're building up a resilient safety net to help to support those folks that will need assistance. That compassion needs to be there in our community, and understanding that compassion and commerce don't compete. They are there and help to support our immediate needs and think about long-term solutions that are going to strengthen our economic engines in our communities. Um, we can't feed our way out of this problem. And I think that you heard that eloquently from Rhonda earlier, that this problem is much larger than all of us. And so what we need to think about are innovative ways to continue to support access to affordable housing, access to higher paying jobs, access to affordable and accessible healthcare, all of the things that go beyond what a food bank can provide, but we can advocate for. Because building a better system that helps to support all of the families that we serve is going to serve us all better.
Yes, and Craig said it so well. I would just like to follow up that absolutely we need the voices of those that we serve, and we're really trying to tap into that, and we will continue to tap into that over the next 6 months and in the coming years that we are really trying to help folks stabilize their lives. And how we do that is we really connect them. We teach them how to speak with their local elected official. And that has been key for us. We actually participated in a special grant through Feeding America, and it was called Neighborhood Voices, and is what our local name was for our program. And I will tell you that it has made a huge impact. We've even brought those neighbors to DC with us to talk with our elected officials at the federal level to express their concern, their needs for federal nutrition programs, especially SNAP. With summer EBT in Tennessee, we were not able to get that match through our state government, and many communities suffered this past summer. We have strong child feeding programs through the federal nutrition programs through summer food and CACFP. Those are great programs. But again, we've got to be able to do more with our communities to be able to help stabilize their lives. And childcare is a huge problem in our region, and we do not have adequate childcare. Our state has acknowledged this. We've had coalitions and roundtable discussions with our elected officials, and we all acknowledge that something's got to be done, because if there's not adequate childcare, affordable childcare, then those that are willing to work and can work, mothers, cannot work, or fathers, single fathers, cannot work because they cannot pay for child care and earn a living at the same time. So it is challenging, and there's so many challenges that we and hurdles that we have to get over on a state level. And so those are things that I think we are looking at as an organization and as a network.
Thank you. And for both of you, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned through your observations in the last few weeks?
I think that the lesson that I've learned is that when you mobilize the community, they come together in an incredible way. We are a resilient organization and a network. So we took this on and we said we're gonna feed our neighbors in need, whatever it takes. We're going to be there for them. We're not going to let them go without food. Whatever it takes, whatever we need to do to move mountains to be able to feed our neighbors. And I think that happened throughout the nation. And our community came together in a wonderful way to support that. We stepped out on faith to be able to source all that food when we may not have had all the resources to pay for that food. We stepped out and we said, we've got to get it in here. We've got to be ready. We know this is happening now. We have a few days, and we've got to be prepared to roll out our activation for our emergency SNAP plan. And what we found is that we had calls and people coming in to support us in that. The part that I think still needs to somehow get to the right lawmakers is food banks. We stepped up to the plate to fill in the gap where they fell short. And we were there for our citizens. And somehow I would like to see the food banks and others that stepped up in those weeks to be able to somehow be supported in that endeavor. I'm not sure how that's going to work out for us, but I will tell you that I'm just so delighted to see that our community was there for us.
I think some of the lessons are the understanding of resiliency and the understanding of resiliency that exists within our own community for individuals who have been struggling and who struggled more, and those who just were experiencing struggle and hardship and how to deal with that. To see folks take this head on and come to us in their last moments of desperation because they had tried to take it all on their own shoulders and carry that burden. I couldn't agree with Rhonda more that folks need to understand that so many of these individuals who have been suffering throughout, not just during the government shutdown, but even before when it started with the economic challenges and tariffs and Doge layoffs and all of those things that impacted families, they weathered all of that storm and didn't come to our doors until it was that finality of this was a breaking point for so many individuals. And so I think the lesson is that if we give people the basics, how they will be able to thrive and survive. And one of the other lessons is that if we just give people simple supports, it's amazing how people can flourish and do so much. But I also think that part of the lesson has been what we've learned as an organization is how to innovate and how to pivot in ways in which we know that we're reaching and supporting individuals in our community who need assistance. Working with some of our smaller providers that are in neighborhoods that we might not be able to reach, that may not have the relationships and the trust that is there, but we have the supplies. And so working with those partners to be able to ensure that they can get that support to those who need it. Understanding that while we may have a fleet of vehicles It's still not enough to compete with the cars that can go to an individual's house, to go to that last mile and be able to deliver food and drop it off at someone's doorstep. That is the power of us as community. That is the power of us connected that really does exceed what any of us can do in this moment alone. And so I think that it really reinforces at times like this an opportunity for us to all come together as food assistance providers, as faith institutions, as different community groups, corporations, all individuals, just everyone coming together and saying that everybody deserves the dignity of being able to feed their families and for children to eat and for seniors to make sure that they're not trying to decide between prescription drugs and whether or not they're going to have a meal. Everybody deserves that dignity. And so, from that perspective, I think that another lesson we've learned is the power and understanding of what food truly means to every single American.
Thank you. As you might imagine, lots of anti hunger advocates tune into the podcast. I've heard what sound like calls to actions in your remarks, but love to just get them out so that our audience can have a clear sense of what can they do? What message should they be delivering to their elected officials, both at the state and national level, to help in this moment?
I think the message that we continue to send to our neighbors is that they they need to share their story, their situation, what they're faced with, so that our elected officials understand how important federal nutrition programs are. They are the first line of defense, and our elected officials know that, but they need to hear the stories that our neighbors are faced with, their situation, their struggles. And because hopefully they have perhaps a resource or even a solution. Our local elected officials, they heard us loud and clear, and they went to our governor, and they were able to secure funding support as a result for to help us with our food sources. And so, I think it's important because you must constantly talk with your elected officials and encourage them to hear the stories that our neighbors are faced with. I think that's really one of the most important things for us is to share those stories.
Thank you. And those stories are so critical, really help to humanize these programs. And unfortunately, being in the DC area, we hear a lot of negative rhetoric, both on Capitol Hill, in the administration, about these programs being abused, which we know is not true. And so, having folks tell their stories, really talk about the need, and having our elected officials understand the importance of these benefits to the people who use them, I think is absolutely critical in terms of turning around some of the negative perceptions and really helping our elected officials understand the importance of supporting programs like SNAP and WIC and other federal nutrition programs. Thank you for that. Craig, what would you say to advocates who are listening to the podcast?
So I would remind them that, food insecurity is not just about empty refrigerators. It is about systems, policies, inequities that it makes sure that some communities are more vulnerable than other communities. And the threats to SNAP and Medicaid aren't just abstract policy debates. They're actually forces that are shaping the daily lives of so many of our neighbors, so many neighbors that are at risk and so many neighbors that are in need. And for us, we need advocates, we need donors, we need policymakers, everyday residents to stand up and stand with us to strengthen our safety net, because it is us as a community who stand to lose when those individuals lose. This is not a zero-sum game, folks. This is something in which we all need to do our part and make sure that there's this recognition that then goes to action. We're all empathetic. When we see someone who is struggling, an older woman who falls down in the middle of the street as she's crossing, we rush to her aid, right? No one wants to sit there and see that woman at risk. And so we're there to rush to pick her up and to usher her across the street. How many of us take that next step to say, where are you going? And let me make sure that you get there safely. That is true compassion. That is taking that action to the next level. That is what it means when it means to advocate for changing policies that ensure that the people who are at risk are never at risk again. If we're doing that, we are moving the needle. We've heard about the daunting numbers that are there that face food banks. You heard Rhonda talk about the statistics of 1 to 9. We're not going to get enough donations or enough food or enough volunteers to be able to help to meet that need. But what we are going to be able to do is to advocate for better policies so that that need never exists to begin with.
Rhonda, Craig, this has been great. Is there anything else you'd really like for our listeners to come away with today?
Minerva, over the years, and just talking with our neighbors in the communities that we serve, they do not choose to be in the situation they're in. That's the key here. So many times, they share the struggles and the challenges. It may be a situation that they didn't receive the education that they could have because their family could not afford it, or they were in a single parent family. In all my years doing this, people are so grateful for the food they receive. They have shown just such wonderful appreciation and have shared that if I could only do this, if I could only do this, I would be able to, provide for me or my family. It's just there's just not enough opportunities, and how we change that, I think, is so very important for generations to come. It's not a situation to where people just want to sit back and take. They just don't have the resources they need to be able to thrive, and so many times that's what we see. And we are constantly innovating, having those conversations. How do we change, that? Because, in food banking, we focus on feeding people, and that's our main mission. But as we have over the years continued to transform and innovate, we know that we have an opportunity. We have the opportunity to work with individuals. We may be the only organization or person that they may know to reach out to. And so we have to be there for them. And that's the key. We've got to be there for them. We've got to, show up, and we need more people to go with us to be there.
Yeah, one of the things that I left out that I think is incredibly important for us to discuss too is the necessity for us to partner across the aisles with other nonprofits. And those other nonprofits are so focused on so many other things that our families need. The reality is that when it comes to food banks, we're typically the canary in the coal mine. They've already experienced healthcare insecurity, already experienced rent and housing insecurity, already experiencing so many other things. And so they're coming to us as kind of a last resort. And so when it comes to mental health, there was a story that somebody told me about their mother as they were growing up. This is a true story. And said that they remember that they used to think that their mom would talk to herself and that she was crazy in their mind, because they would see her sitting at a table by herself with a dimly lit light above her, and she would be saying numbers. And one day they walked up and looked over her shoulder, and there were cash piles. And the cash piles represented the different bills that she had to pay. and she was moving money back and forth between between the multitude of them. I think one they said was for rent, another was for utilities, another was for food, and the fourth stack was one that was there that they knew would be if they had a little money to maybe go to a fast food restaurant or they needed a pair of shoes, that was that last pile. And they said for them, they could feel the mental angst of the mom as she would move money back and forth between the piles. But the thing that made it even harder was for them that they would always see that fourth pile dwindle. And they knew that meant that they weren't going to get anything, whether it was a pair of shoes or to be able to go to McDonald's for a treat or something like that. But they knew what it meant to the mom as well, because her heart dropped every single time that fourth pile started to disappear. And the stealing of happiness, the stealing of the joy in being able to provide some of those things, and the pressure that mounts when you have to make difficult decisions like that weigh on individuals. And so making sure that they have that mental health support, not just for them, but for the families, and to have this grown woman tell this story that she remembered so vividly, it impacted her too. And it impacts the children of so many of these families also as they continue to struggle. So let's make sure we understand and remember about how this toll not just takes on them physically, but also on them from a mental health aspect as well.
Thank you. Thank you for those powerful words and calls to action. Finally, how can our listeners learn more about your organizations? Rhonda?
They can learn more about our organization, obviously, through our website, which is netfoodbank.org. They can also visit us on social media outlets, Facebook and Instagram. We're on all of the social outlets as Second Harvest Food Bank of Northeast Tennessee. Craig, I love what you said. All that was just incredible. It is definitely what's going to make the difference. People can visit our website and see those things that they can get involved with, because stabilizing people's lives is what it's all about.
Thank you. Craig?
Yeah, if anyone's interested in helping out in our mission, again, from an advocacy standpoint, or when it comes to directly helping us out, it's www.mannafood.org. But I will say that for individuals, the best thing that you can do wherever you are across this country is continue to talk to people about the true face of hunger. The person who's actually working one or two jobs, who has two children, whose husband may have had an injury and so they can't work. And so you have a mom who's not only caring for two children, but trying to nurse her husband back to health and just needs a little support. Those are the real people that are out there, the real face of hunger. It's here in our community. And so to help, just tell the stories. Tell the real stories about who it is that food banks across America are serving and why it's so important that we need to continue to do that, but also change the systems and policies so that they can live better lives.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
That was Rhonda Chafin of Second Harvest Food Bank of Northeast Tennessee and Craig Rice of Manna Food Center. You can learn more about their organizations by visiting our show notes. You can also get in touch with us by emailing podcast@alliancetoendhunger.org. This has been another episode of Voices to End Hunger. It was produced and edited by Nate McGrath, and I'm Minerva Delgado. See you next time.